Good afternoon. I am calling the meeting to order so that we can proceed. May we take our seats and start the meeting? I'm looking at the back. May we take our seats and start the meeting, please? The meeting is called to order. Good afternoon, Excellencies, colleagues, fellow delegates, particularly those from headquarters. I want to thank sincerely Ambassador Tara of Pakistan, who saw you through the morning in a very effective way, I'm told. Judging by the way the agenda was addressed this morning, it does look like there was real progress. Thank you very much, Ambassador. Let me, under his guidance and the notes that have been left for me to continue, briefly recap what was considered this morning. I think you did effectively agenda item 6, which was the 6th Global Environment Outlook, and agenda item 8, which we are to continue to conclude this afternoon. But at this stage, I'm aware that Contact Group 3, under the chair of Ambassador Fernandez, began their negotiations earlier. And with your permission, I would like to invite Ambassador Fernandez, the facilitator of the contact group, to briefly update on the progress so far since the group met this morning. Ambassador Fernandez, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We have made progress in both resolutions, so we divided the resolution in half in order to allow progress in both resolutions. We managed to reach PP 10 in the draft resolution submitted by the Republic of Iraq, and the air pollution resolution, all the PPs were covered in this reading. But of course, there are still a lot of open questions, so I hope that delegations will use the time wisely tomorrow. We will start tomorrow at 2 o'clock, and we will do the resolutions in reverse order. So we will start with air pollution and then continue the latter part after 4 with the resolution submitted by the Iraq. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Ambassador Fernandez. I think that sounds like there's good progress. Just to remind delegates, including those that are just entering the room now, that Contact Group 3 resumes tomorrow at 2 p.m. May we ask the people at the back to respect the quietness and focus of the meeting and hold their consultations a little outside, or try and be as quiet as possible. May we ask the people at the back to give us a time to focus, please? Thank you. At this stage, we will move to item 8, and I would like to sincerely indulge the patience of the President, because we'll go back to item 7 after we conclude 8, and welcome again, sir. Item 8 on the budget and program performance, including implementation of Assemblies resolutions. At this stage, is my pleasure to invite the Deputy Executive Director, Mr. Ibrahim Thiaw, to provide.
I have a point of order.
Right, there's a point of order from U.S. delegation. You have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and welcome. It's great to see you here, Ambassador. We had, before we left, talked about the possibility that we might conclude our work early in the plenary this afternoon, and if so, that there might be an opportunity for one of the contact groups to begin its work then. If it would be very useful if that has been determined, what group that would be and what resolutions they might take up, that we would know now so that countries could prepare for that, even though it may not take place until for another hour or an hour and a half. But to effectively use our time, if you could identify that early, it would be most helpful. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you very much, U.S. Let me give the Secretariat the opportunity to clarify, given that they would have noted that in the morning, and I believe they might have some suggestion. Secretary of the governing bodies, you have the floor.
Thank you. Thank you very much, distinguished representative of the United States. We did, in fact, consulted with Vice President Ambassador Raza Tarar, who was chairing the morning session, and several of the Bureau members, although no formal Bureau meeting was held. And the Secretariat is of the opinion and advised the Vice Chair of the committee that we retain the structure as it was agreed this morning. Therefore, should there be additional time available, the encouragement would be for negotiators to work in informal consultations and also to allow Contact Group 2, as has been announced and will start meeting as a matter of fact now, to be able to proceed smoothly. So given the fact that we were not able to determine exactly the amount of time which the plenary will consume, we definitely advise to use the agreed structure as it was adopted at the first plenary meeting. Therefore, Contact Group under the leadership of Ambassador Elizabeth Taylor will meet at 2 p.m. As we announce it, this plenary will continue in addressing agenda item 8, which is yet not concluded, then take agenda item 7. That is the advice. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. What I'm getting is that we will rapidly move so that Contact Group under the chairmanship of Colombia, or chairpersonship of Colombia, can commence at 2. And then as we save time, there could be further informal consultations, but mindful of the agreed structure of the OECPR. You have the floor, U.S.
Thank you, Chair, and apologies again for interrupting. I just wanted to say that there were some informal negotiations on the two lead resolutions over this intervening period, and we were able to merge those resolutions, so we would be withdrawing our resolution and submitting a new merged resolution for the Contact Group 2 so that delegates can plan their time. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That is very welcome information from the U.S. and would like to thank all those that were involved in those consultations. Good work. And I'll give the floor to Ibrahim.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good afternoon and welcome back. This morning we had one question that was still pending related to the Montevideo process. And with your permission, Mr. Chairman, I would like to give the floor to Elizabeth Mrema, the Director of the Law Division, to actually provide us with the update. Thank you.
Thank you, Elizabeth. You have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, distinguished delegates, for the opportunity to respond to the pending question related to the process for the review and development of the new Montevideo program on environmental law. Distinguished delegates will recall Resolution 2/19 had requested the Executive Director to establish national focal points who will work and support us in this process. I have the honor to confirm that the national focal points have been nominated by member states, We have about 84 nominations which had been received. We have had 2 webinar meetings already with these national focal points. We will request those member states that had not nominated focal points to do so. We intend to have a face-to-face meeting with the nominated focal points sometime in March next year. And basically, the focal points will begin working with us in terms of preparing an assessment for the implementation and effectiveness, as well as the impact of the current Montevideo Program 4 on progressive development and implementation of environmental law, as well as to begin also preparing a new Montevideo 5 program, which will begin or its effectiveness from 2020. Both the assessment and the proposal for Montevideo 5 are expected to be presented at the UN Environment Assembly for 2019 for consideration and hopefully adoption at the time. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Any further supplementation from the Deputy ED? Were there any further comments on this before we proceed? Let me give the floor to the Secretariat briefly.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. We have received the request by the co-chairs of the special program on chemicals, who is established as a follow-up to the resolution UNEA/2/5 to elaborate on the information document number 10, which they have produced. But before you close the agenda item, I want to make sure that Sweden is in fact ready to present, followed by the other co-chairs. So if distinguished delegate of Sweden could request the floor, and if you could accord Sweden the opportunity to present.
Thank you. If Sweden is ready, you have the opportunity.
Thank you very much. I have the honor to present the report from the Executive Bureau of the Special Program, together with my co-chair colleague, Susanna from former Republic of Macedonia. This special program has undertaken one full round of application, and its pilot phase approved 7 projects from Argentina, Benin, the Dominican Republic, Kyrgyzstan, Iraq, Tanzania, and Ukraine. The implementation of the pilot phase has started, and the second round on application is ongoing. I will now continue to report on the operational arrangements set out in terms of reference. The special program has developed application forms and guidelines to support the applicants throughout the process, drawing on lessons learned during the first round of applications and on the experience of the Quick Start program of a strategic approach to international chemical management. All guidance and forms is easily accessible from the official webpage of the special program. The application forms were specifically designed to obtain the information required under the terms of reference. In relation to submissions received by the Secretariat and decisions taken by the Executive Board, a total of 54 applications were received in the first round of application during the first semester last year, 2016. And between July and September 16, the Secretariat, with support of the internal task team, which comprised of representatives of the Secretariat from the Basel, Rotterdam, and Stockholm Convention, the Interim Secretariat of the Minamata Convention, and the SAICEM and the GEF Secretariat, undertook an appraisal of the applications received. The Bureau had held a second meeting in October 2016 and reviewed the application and decided to launch the 7 projects mentioned. And during the second round of application, which were held during the first semester of 2017, the Secretariat received 39 applications. And to complete the eligible application reviewed by the Secretariat with support of the internal task team, they will be submitted to the board at its 3rd meeting to be held during this weekend. for consideration and decision. And there has been no cases of cumulative allocation to date. All applications received were found to be in compliance with the paragraph on beneficiary contribution. No application were excluded on that basis. The Secretariat is also assisting applicants in the second round of applications with any matters regarding to any of the terms of reference. Project cooperation agreements between the Environment Programme and the implementing organization or institutions of the project has been and will continue to be developed. Narrative reports and financial reports are scheduled within the arrangement accordingly. I now ask for permission to hand over to my co-chair colleague, Susanne. Thank you.
You have the floor and can wrap up as briefly as you can. Use the mic, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The Executive Board of the Special Program considers that the operational arrangements have facilitated effective implementation of the program and no problems of specific issues of concern have been identified in that regard. Without prejudice to the continuous need to monitor and improve in the light of lessons learned, the Executive Board considers that the terms of reference provide the necessary flexibility and guidance and have served to develop and operationalize the special program effectively. In conclusion, the Executive Board considers that no adjustments are required to the operational arrangements contained in the terms of reference. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much. We, at this stage, wish to, with your permission, take note of the report on special programs on chemicals as presented under UNIA 3/Info 10. You agree to just take note of this? Yeah. Thank you. I propose that to the committee that we make use of the progress reports presented under this agenda item as part of the standing items for our OECPR in 2018, in line with the requests that I understand were made by member states. I see no objection. That's agreed. Obviously, member states will be given the opportunity to deep dive into all updates by the Executive Director, with a focus on recommendations and suggested actions for each update in the main committee meeting after the UN Environment Assembly. If I don't see any other requests for the floor, we may consider closing this agenda item. The agenda item is closed. Distinguished delegates, it is now my pleasure to move to Item 7, and at this stage invite the President of the United Nations Environment Assembly, His Excellency Mr. Edgar Guterres, to update us on the status of the ministerial outcome document. The President is taking his place, and welcome, Mr. President. If you are ready, I hope I'm not rushing you. If you're ready, you have the floor, sir.
Thank you very much indeed. His Excellency Ambassador John Moretti, Chair of the Committee of Permanent Representatives, distinguished Ibrahim Tiao, Deputy Executive Director of the United Nations Environment Program, distinguished delegates, distinguished representatives of the major groups and stakeholders, ladies and gentlemen. Almost 2 years ago, I was honored to be elected as President of the United Nations Environment Assembly, the world's highest level decision-making body on environment, comprising of all 193 member states and involving the participation of major groups and stakeholders. I committed to ensure a transparent, inclusive, and participatory process to prepare for the third session of the United Nations Environment Assembly with the support of members of the Bureau of the Environment Assembly and of the Committee of Permanent Representatives, through consultations with member states and major groups and stakeholders, and with the support of the United Nations Environment Program Secretariat. We define a roadmap to ensure a meaningful, focused, and action-oriented process toward reaching consensus on a ministerial declaration to respond to one of the major threats we are facing today, pollution. At the outset of this journey, you have encouraged me to work towards an outcome that is simple enough in terms of language and content so that everyone can read and understand, yet strong enough to drive immediate action from everyone to contribute to prevent and combat pollution. Furthermore, the declaration should support the resolutions adopted by the Assembly and interlink with the Sustainable Development Goals. As you recall, we began this process in early June by sharing with member states an outline and requested their inputs on the main elements to be included. A zero draft was then developed and shared for comments and inputs. These comments were considered in a new version distributed on September the 22nd. Thereafter, I released my final draft that was shared on November the 2nd and translated into the official UN working languages. I received inputs and comments through written submissions and informal consultations with the Committee of Permanent Representatives, with ministers in occasion of other international meetings, and various regional ministerial fora of the environment, all of which have helped tremendously to build a consensual document. During the past days, I have continued to receive comments and suggestions. I met with representatives of regional and political groups and interested delegations to listen to their proposals. After these meetings, and in the spirit of transparency, I have shared with all of you a text reflecting the inputs and comments gathered during these meetings and the written submissions. I want to thank you for embracing this approach and for your cooperation and consensus-minded contributions in return. It has truly been a privilege for me to talk to so many of you personally, hear your views, and be welcomed in your countries to share my ideas and thoughts. For this, I am requesting Ambassador Moretti, as chair of the Committee of Permanent Representatives, to convene under my leadership an open-ended negotiation meeting to work on the ministerial outcome document at the end of the plenary today. During this negotiation meeting, and with your support, due to the little time available, I intend to continue gathering comments and suggestions to the revised draft distributed on Monday, based on a paragraph-by-paragraph consideration. My intention is to complete a first full reading by tonight of this revised draft. A second revised draft will be ready for circulation by tomorrow morning. This will be the basis for the second and hopefully final negotiation scheduled for tomorrow evening. It is my hope that this process will lead to a final document for endorsement at the closing plenary of the open-ended Committee of Permanent Representatives during the afternoon of December the 1st. I invite all delegates to approach this negotiation with commitment, flexibility, and wisdom, with the knowledge that our decisions will have profound impact on the way we face pollution, a threat to our own survival, a threat that we have imposed to ourselves. Before finalizing, I would like to recognize the valuable contributions of member states, the guidance of the members of both the Bureau of the UN Environment Assembly and of the Committee of Permanent Representatives, as well as of major groups and stakeholders. I would also like to highlight the valuable support and work of the United Nations Environment Program Secretariat and my team in the development of this document in the spirit of cooperation and transparency. Before us is the opportunity to demonstrate our political commitment, by reaching a consensus on how we will contribute to mobilize our own governments and citizens and cooperate to prevent and manage pollution towards a pollution-free planet. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Just to not to try and repeat what the President has said, except to mention that we will work on the basis of the draft that has been circulated on 27th November, based on the consultations meetings that the President has finalized, addressed in his presentation. The revised draft is on the basis of the process which will begin today, this evening, as he has highlighted and as agreed during the consultations with the groups. The idea is at the end of this OECPR, there should be what comes close to the final draft. In fact, the final draft that can be presented to ministers for endorsement. Based on the President's presentation, let me invite the chairs of regional and political groups to take the floor first before I give the opportunity to individual member states. Are there any chairs of regional groups and political groups proposing to take the floor in response to the President's presentation? I see none. It means everybody is clear and crystal clear on the President's proposed roadmap. It is, we shall move on the basis of the understanding that we have obtained from the President's presentation. It is so decided. Wonderful. I wish to remind you that consultations will take place today from 6 p.m. to 9 p.m. in conference rooms 3 and 4. As agreed in our organization of work, there will be no plenary meeting tomorrow. I wish to encourage you to pay close attention to announcements by the Secretariat on any changes that may have to be made in the schedule of work. I also encourage all delegations to make optimal use of the limited time available for reaching agreement, including through informal meetings of interested delegations to iron out difficult items or issues. Lastly, I appeal to all delegations to make every effort to finalize negotiations of text as soon as possible to allow for a smooth process of minimizing or of transmitting a compilation of draft resolutions to the Environment Assembly. Before I adjourn the meeting, I would like to remind you that tomorrow we will start with the regional group meetings at 8 a.m. and it will be followed by the committee bureau meeting from 8:30, that is the CPR bureau, 8:30, in conference room 8. At this stage, does the Secretariat have any housekeeping announcements? You have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a very small housekeeping announcement regarding the payment of daily subsistence allowance for those participants that are funded by the UN Environment Program, thanks to the generosity of the many member states who have contributed to the success of this OECPR and Assembly. The DSA will be paid as of tomorrow, Thursday, November 30th, and Friday, 1st of December, between 3 and 6 p.m., that means in the afternoon, in conference room 7. I invite all delegates that require to make this, cash of the DSA to bring with them, as usual, the boarding pass, the stamped passport page, and a copy of their ticket. If they have copies of it, we're happy to take them. If not, we're happy to support them in obtaining their photocopies. That's the only announcement we have, Chair, and I thank you very much for your consideration.
Thank you. Thank you. I hope the announcements are pretty clear. Does any delegation or member of the CPR wish to take the floor at this stage? South Africa, then followed by the European Union.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to come back to the draft resolution on lead in paint and wasted lead acid batteries. Just to confirm that we have submitted the merged draft to the Secretariat with the request that it be circulated to all Member States as well as being placed on the resolution platform. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, South Africa. That has been noted. I thought I saw EU. Yes, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and let me convey the message to Mr. President on behalf of EU and its member states. We highly appreciate, Mr. President, your work in building towards consensus on a declaration of World Environment Ministers. Our Ministers of Environment agreed already on 13th of October that we are committed to effectively tackle pollution and hope ministers from all UN member states will show their commitments also. The European Union and its member states emphasize the global framework of the 2030 Agenda and the Sustainable Development Goals for any global long-term plan. We emphasize the utmost importance of concerted and ambitious action and wide international mobilization to tackle pollution. This should take into account the links with climate change, biodiversity loss and desertification. Pollution affects water and food security, economic developments and social justice, including health equality. We also find it important to promote the science policy interface in decision-making, and it is essential to engage in multilateral collaboration to address pollution effectively. Mr. President, you have achieved a remarkable result in your consultations so far. The European Union and its member states can support the work you have done, and we encourage others to do likewise. Consensus among United Nations member states on specific pollution issues will provide a strong mandate for further actions by the United Nations Environment Programme. We appreciate the final draft of the ministerial outcome document circulated this week by the President, and it succeeds in conveying the urgency of the challenges and our commitment to address them. And as such, we believe that it can serve as a strong communication tool for United Nations Environmental Assembly. We look forward to engaging in the discussions to finalize the ministerial outcome document over the next 3 days. We encourage you to continue to show strong leadership and guide us towards meaningful and understandable text to which all ministers can align. What matters most is the advancement of essence of the messages and incentivizing action. Mr. President, we look forward to working with you and other member states and would appreciate consultations in line with the approach taken so far, and we support an approach using our time as efficiently as possible. Thank you very much, Mr. President.
Thank you very much, EU. I have to admit that from the chair, I was lenient because we had long passed the item and you had missed the vote. You caught somewhere the edge of the vote, and let's at least be more alert next time when the items are discussed and the opportunities open for consultations. I welcome your remarks, but I will not allow it the next time. So I just wanted to highlight that as for the benefit of all members of this meeting. I think with that, we wish to close the meeting and look forward to seeing you tomorrow. Hoping you have taken advantage of all the announcements and we will all be ready and fired up tomorrow.
Tonight, one contact group and ministerial.
Yes, the contact group. At 6. No plenary tomorrow. The contact groups continue this evening as highlighted. Thank you very much. The meeting is adjourned.